So I spent a lot of time dunking on Warner Brothers on this channel because I think they own some of the most important IP in all of cinema, and they've managed to squander some of that repeatedly over and over and over again. They own the rights to Harry Potter. Those movies have been really good. I think they could have certainly been better. DC has probably been one of the areas where they have dropped the ball the most, especially when you look at what Marvel has done over the course of the last 11, 12 years in regards to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I reviewed Space Jam a couple weeks ago, and that movie sucks. So they spent the entire time in that movie like congratulating themselves and patting themselves on the back for owning all these IP and just made a trash movie out of it. Um, some of the movies have fared well. I think Joker, which is kind of set outside of the DCU, was phenomenal. I think the upcoming Batman movie, The Batman by Matt Reeves, is going to be spectacular, but we'll see. So today I'm going to talk about The Suicide Squad, which is a sequel, a direct sequel to Suicide Squad, the David Ayer film from like half a decade ago. That movie was forgettable. It made a ton of money, and it looks like The Suicide Squad is off to a okay, but not great start in terms of its box office haul. It's going to make a decent amount of money in terms of subscriptions for HBO Max, but apart from that, it's kind of fallen a little bit flat in terms of expectations. So, whereas the first one made a bunch of money and everyone hated it, it seems like everyone loves this one, but was so disappointed by the first one that the reaction from a money standpoint has been underwhelming. So, let's talk about it. Before we get started, thank you so much for watching the video. If you like the channel, click on the red subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you know whenever I post a new piece of content. So James Gunn, after some incendiary tweets surfaced several years back, was fired from basically by Marvel and Disney for those tweets. He was canceled at the time. I thought it was dumb. I defended him, and I think he never should have been fired. I think cancel culture came for him, and it really shouldn't have. I'm sure we have political agreements and disagreements, but I don't think anybody should be canceled from the public space for making jokes, which those tweets clearly were. So he made a deal with Warner Brothers and DC to basically just make a sequel to The Suicide Squad. I think everyone kind of wondered, would it be a reboot? Would it be a sequel? Would it be a remake? What would it look like? And this is a direct sequel to that film. And as I mentioned in the intro, that movie was very much hated, but made a ton of money because I think people were expecting it to be something that it definitely wasn't. It was butchered by the studio. There was so much producer interference from the top down that David Ayer has expressed clear frustration with how all of that was handled. The introductions to the characters in that movie were awful. Half the movie was like in the trailer but didn't make it into the movie. And so Gunn had a lot of work to do in terms of making this thing work. The primary cast are not actors that he chose. He had tremendous success with Guardians of the Galaxy. He chose his own cast for that. He decided who he was going to work with, everything. And that movie is fantastic. The first Guardians of the Galaxy is spectacular. And Gunn has proven time and time again between Guardians 1, Guardians 2, which I don't think was as good as the first one, and now the Suicide Squad, that he really knows how to take an ensemble cast and make characters that are interesting and unique and fun while also having a tremendous amount of depth to them and doing it with unknown characters. Now, with the Suicide Squad, we know about Rick Flag. We know about Harley Quinn. We know these characters already exist. So he takes those two characters, adds a bunch of new moving pieces. Obviously, Viola Davis is still in it as Amanda Waller, but the rest of the cast is basically entirely new. And this movie really, really is a lot of fun. It's really James Gunn at his most kind of unhinged. And it's nice that Warner Brothers took a chance and said, look, we're just going to give you the keys to the castle. They saw the success of Joker. Clearly, they said, whatever you want to do, rating be damned. We don't care. Just roll with it. And this movie really, really, really works because they just let Gunn be himself. And it really shines through. And I'd say the first 10 minutes of the movie, when it really does do a good job of subverting your expectations for what you think a movie like this is going to look like. Um, it does that the entire time. There's lots of twists, there's lots of turns. None of them I saw coming, even though in hindsight it's kind of like, I should have seen that coming. As for the characters, I think Joel Kinnaman is great as Rick Flag. The Polka Dot Man is a great new character. Harley Quinn is fantastic in this. And John Cena's Peacemaker really does kind of steal the show. I didn't dislike any of the characters in this movie. Nathan Fillion is in it. There's a bunch of like big name actors that are there, and the choices that Gunn makes with those characters in the first 10 minutes of the movie is really bold, and honestly, it had me laughing a lot. In the first 10 minutes of this movie is probably the hardest I've laughed at any of the James Gunn movies. And that really is sustained throughout the entire thing. It would have been easy for him to just get all of the funny out in the first 15 minutes of the movie, but this really is a tremendous piece of work from him. It's got all of that emotional depth and heart that you kind of expect from movies like his. The ending of the first Guardians of the Galaxy really got to me with Peter Quill's relationship with his mother and her suffering through her cancer and him dealing with her death and the relationship he has with the music that his mother passed on to him. And there's similar threads woven throughout the story of the Suicide Squad. And Gunn really has a great understanding of these very obscure characters. And the script does a strong job of fleshing all of that out in ways that are fresh and unexpected, while still very much feeling like they come from the mind of James Gunn. So the Suicide Squad, it's disappointing that it seems like it's not going to make all that much money. The movie is clearly set up for a sequel. There's a scene right after the credits starts. There's a full post-credit scene that I adored. Actually, I adored both of those scenes. And it's really, really, really a lot of fun. And it's disappointing that it's a sequel to a movie that sucks so bad, because I think if the Suicide Squad had even been like a mediocre film instead of a bad one, then the sequel, this movie, would have made a lot more money, because I think people would have given it more of a chance than they would have otherwise. So yeah, Suicide Squad, it's great. I love it. Check it out. It's showing on HBO Max. It's also in theaters. I think it's on HBO Max for a month. So I adore this movie. I think it's probably the best of all of the DCEU movies. I'd say it definitely is. If you set aside Joker, I think Joker is the best of the DC movies that we've gotten over the course of the last decade. Or what was it, 2005, 2006, when Man of Steel came out? I think this is the best of all of those movies if you remove the Joker from it. So I'm interested to see what happens with the Batman and where that slots into all of this DC happenings. But yeah, good on James Gunn. This is I don't know if it's the best movie he's done. I think Guardians was so special and so out of nowhere, we kind of know what to expect from Gunn at this point. But it's definitely the best of the modern DC movies. So again, setting aside the Joker. So yeah, thanks so much for checking out the video. If you enjoyed it, found it helpful, please consider subscribing. You can also like and share it, since that tells YouTube it's worth promoting. Let me know in the comments what you think of the Suicide Squad. Again, these videos are a little bit different. My wrist is not broken, but my elbow is fractured, so I'm still wearing this because it kind of helps stabilize my wrist, which is where most of the pain is. So typing is still a bit tough. Next couple of reviews, probably for the next 2 months or so, it's going to be me just talking to the camera, much more freeform than you're used to. So let me know what you think of the format. Let me know what you think of the Suicide Squad, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.